Hey everybody, Martin here, and welcome to another fine, glorious Saturday morning here at the Print and Play Hideaway. And we are here to do a little bit of playthrough and a little bit of learning of the game Goblivion, which is a hybrid of tower defense and deck building. Now I have to say I'm a huge deck building fan, as you know, most of you who know me are familiar with my posts. I love the deck building genre. I've never even played a tower defense game, so we'll see how that goes. And I've got a little bit of a notification saying that Matthew Weber liked my live stream, and so I'm assuming it's you that just entered. Matthew, hi, and good morning, good Saturday morning. We're getting set up to play Goblivion. I've got two people on the stream. Hello and welcome. Let me know who you are and how you're here. Drop me a comment in the comments section. Ask me questions. I've watched a couple of the some of the designer playthrough on this game, so I know a little bit more what I'm doing, and I've read the rules and I'm kind of working my way through. A little bit similar to Friday, if you're familiar with that. Howdy from Cleveland, Matthew. Howdy, thank you. Thanks for stopping by, and thanks for joining me here on this stream. Okay, without further ado, I'm going to switch the view so that you can see what's on my game table here. Let me go ahead and go to the software and do this option over here. I've also got the rules open on the computer, so sometimes if you see me kind of looking not quite directly at the camera, it's me trying to read the rules. All right, 5 people on the stream. That's awesome. And let's see if I can open that screen up a little bit more. Great. Okay. So let's just show you what we've got here. Let's explain what you see on the table here. So here on the left side of the screen is the market. So these are what's called in the rules the golden cards. And they're actually separated into 2 tiers. So, and that's kind of designated by the number of swords you see in the upper left of each market card. If there's 1 sword, then that's the tier 1 cards, and those are available for you to purchase right away. Then these top 4 cards over here, these are they have 2 swords in the upper left. And those are cards that you're not able to purchase right away. You have to defeat your first enemy in combat to be able to purchase those cards. So 2-tiered kind of market deck, which is kind of unique. I've not seen that in a deck builder before, so that's kind of an interesting thing. Over here in the top center of the display is you have what's called the enemy board. And the enemy board is the kind of tower defense portion or mechanic of this game. You have here a deck of enemies. And every turn, they're going to push closer to the castle gates, which are over here. They're designated by castle gates. And then the design of this game is pretty cool in that there are icons everywhere that kind of let you know what is possible there. So for example, here at the castle gates, you've got these 3 monster symbols, and that tells you that there's a maximum of 3 monsters who can be at the gates at any given time. Excuse me 1 second, I hear scratching at my door here. I think there's a dog who's trying to get in, or multiple dogs are trying to get in. I'll be right back. Come on. All right, so we've now got 3 dogs kind of hanging out at my feet here. Okay, so I was discussing the castle gates, right? And so printed on the enemy board, you have these 3 monster symbols that gives you an indication that there is a limit of 3 monsters who can be at your gates at any given time. So if any monsters come in behind them, they get obliterated instantly. I don't know how thematically that works. Which is kind of a bummer because you might want to defeat that monster, because when you defeat monsters in this game, they get flipped. The card flips 180 degrees and then gets added to your town, and eventually could help you in your effort to defeat the monsters. So that's what the monster deck is here. The other thing I'll mention about the monster deck is that it is two tiers of difficulty. Matthew says every game feature background jingles. Every game features background jingles. Okay. Oh yeah, that's because of the dogs. That's right. You're right. It's their collars that are kind of jingling. I guess my microphone is sensitive enough to pick that up. I'm gonna have to figure out how to filter out the background jingles, unless you find that the background jingles enhance your enjoyment of the live stream. I've got two very excitable puppies here, Lily and Monty, and they're just playing with each other right now. Okay, so back to the game. So also up here you see some of the tokens. You see these are resource tokens here. These are kind of energy or kind of the value tokens that kind of add to your currency while you're fighting or while you're purchasing cards. These are kind of, Matthew says it's a soundtrack in my house. It's perfect. Yeah, Matthew's got some very, very cute dogs as well. Awesome. And these tokens here, they represent kind of bonuses to the monster's power. And then we've got negative resources here, or minus resource tokens here. They're all mounted on poker chips, by the way. So the reason why you're seeing this video in the Print and Play Hideaway is because this is all Print and Play, by the way. I finished yesterday. Last thing that I'll explain here is the player board, which is over here on the right side of your screen. And it contains the town. The town is represented by these randomly drawn and shuffled 20 cards from the starter deck. And so that's one kind of key difference from, let's say, Friday, or let's say most other deck builders that I'm familiar with, is when you start the game, you take from the kind of large deck of town cards, the starter cards, and then you shuffle them, and then you draw 20 at random and place them here in this kind of castle space on the board. So, in other words, your starter cards can change from game to game, which can introduce a little bit of variability, some would say a little bit of randomness, right? Because a lot of these cards are low level, some of them are neutral, and some of them are actually negative. They actually take points away from you. And so by the random shuffle, if you end up with a lot of cards that are negative for you, then that could affect your initial fortunes of success of the game. But I'm kind of interested in this system. I've not really seen a deck builder with kind of randomized starter cards, so I'm curious about that. Other features of the player board here are you have the hospital. So the hospital corresponds to the discard pile of a deck builder. So if the castle deck is the draw deck, then once you finish playing all of your cards, and any cards that you were able to purchase or defeat, then they get added to the hospital. So thematically, any cards that get played in the field of battle, at the end of the battle, they end up at the hospital, or during training. So if it's sometimes there's no monsters at the gates, and so you have to train your troops, and they all end up in the hospital because training is very difficult. Training is very strenuous. Ahab likes your video playing Goblivion. Awesome. Armando says, this game looks fantastic. I totally missed out. Armando, hi, and thanks for joining the stream. You can send an email or a message to Jean-Francois Gauthier, the designer of this game, and he might be willing, I'm pretty sure he'd be willing to sell you the print and play. So you should check that out. Check out that option. I believe the website is gobliviongames.com/news. A couple more things to explain here before I start playing. So every game you have to randomly select your king or queen. So for this game, I have selected Loco the Brute. Let me point it up to the camera here. Loco the Brute. And as you can see here, Loco, he gives you a little bit of starting information and resources here. So here in the upper left, he gives you 21 resources. So I already took the 21 resources. Jean-Francois Dupont likes your photo, Soloborg. Okay, cool. I'm getting Facebook notifications. Armando says, I will check that out. Thanks, my friend. You are most welcome. So starting resources 21. So we've got the starting resources here in our kind of treasury. And then there's a green area and a red area on the right of the king or queen card. And the green area is a starting benefit and the red area is a starting penalty. So for Loco the Brute, you start the game with a bodyguard. And it tells you the type of bodyguard. So a soldier for free, yay! So we took a soldier from the market here and placed him in the bodyguard area of the player board. And then it says the penalty is if you train a builder, lose 2 resources. So, you know, now with, I guess with part and parcel of Loco doesn't like builders. So they're more expensive. And so that's what this token is for. This kind of -2 here. I place it on top of the builder pile here in the market to let me know that because Loco is my king, if I want to get a builder, which I would, I actually would want to get a builder because it's one of the only cards in the market that allow you to earn more resources, but it's going to cost more, it's more expensive to be able to take that card because of Loco. Okay, so we've got our town set up, represented by our town deck. We've got our enemy deck set up, represented by the enemy deck here. And the enemy deck is split in half. So the enemy part is on top, and this red number shows you their power. And this number here tells you how many cards you can draw from the town to be able to match that number. And then if you beat the enemy, you flip it 180 degrees, and then that is your bonus for defeating that enemy. Cool. And then finally, there's a boss deck. So the number of bosses, well, first of all, you shuffle the boss deck. There's about 7 bosses that come with the game, and then randomly draw as many bosses as you would like the game difficulty to be. So the rules state that if you want an easy game, draw 3 bosses. If you want a normal difficulty game, draw 4 bosses. And if you want a difficult or hard difficulty, draw 5 bosses. So I'm still learning. I don't know what I'm doing here. So I've drawn 3 bosses, and that's what I've got so far. And then, we've got our market set up, and we have this little green token that says, in this game, for whatever reason, you kind of have to identify which deck you are purchasing from that turn. I think, although I'm not mistaken, that we'll check out the rules state that you can't purchase the same market card twice in a row, and that might be the point of this token. Not quite sure yet. Hopefully we'll figure that out as we get started. Okay, and there is a handy-dandy turn order printed right here in the upper left of the player board that kind of tells you the phases of each turn and the turn sequence. So that's very, very handy. Okay, so without further ado, with 2 people on the stream, let's get started. Let's start playing Goblivion. So the first thing we need to do is training. So to train, we take this token and then we place it on the... got dogs kind of coughing in the background. And we place it on the deck that the market deck that we want to purchase from. So I'm going to place it on a soldier. So I'm going to try to go for another soldier. So here's how the training phase works. You take that card that you intend to purchase, and you look at the requirements on the bottom. I think this camera actually shows it a little better. You take a look at the requirements on the bottom. So from left to right, it tells you you may draw this number of cards. So that's 3. And then the value in the middle is the target, right? So you have to make, with those 3 cards that you draw, you have to meet or exceed this value here, which is 2 in this particular case. And then this icon on the right here means you have to remove a peasant. That icon it means a peasant. You have to remove a peasant from your deck to be able to take this card into your town. So thematically, what you're doing is you are training a peasant to become this upgraded unit. All right. So hopefully that makes sense. Got one person on the stream who heard that explanation. I'm wondering if that's Matthew. Is that still you, Matthew? Are you hanging tough? Okay. So we're going for this soldier. So we have to draw 3 cards from our castle for the training. So let's draw. Our first card is a hunter, and he's giving us a training value of 1. And then our second card is a beggar, who's giving us a training value of -1. So they're canceling each other out right now. So right now my total training value is 0, and I have 1 more card to draw. And it's a farmer who's not very good at training, so he's also giving me a 0. So after drawing 3 cards, Matthew says still here. Thank you for hanging tough, my friend. So after drawing 3 cards, we have a net training value of 0. And that's represented by this number in the upper left of each card. So we now have to make up for the shortfall in terms of our resources. We have to dip into our coffers to complete the training of this unit. So we still have a target value of 2, so we're going to have to give up 2 of our resources. So from 21, I'm going to flip this. We go down to 19 resources. So we gave up 2 resources to be able to make this target value here. And then we have to burn a peasant from our deck. Now, fortunately, this beggar has a peasant symbol here in the upper right. And this beggar is actually a negative card for us. So this would make total sense for us to be able to get rid of this beggar and train him up to actually be a soldier to help our war effort. So I'm going to get rid of this beggar from the game. And then now we've got this soldier. We satisfied the requirements to take this soldier. So after playing everything, all the cards that were involved in that kind of phase all get discarded. They all go to the hospital, which is over here. So we've just completed the first training phase. Cool. Now, according to the turn order, the next phase is the enemy pushes. And right now, what that means is you take the top card of the enemy deck, and then you place it 1 space to the right. So that's how that works out. And because there are no enemies yet at the castle gates, we skip the next combat phase. So I just want to pause here and say I kind of like this game design where they kind of build in, they allow you to kind of like train and build up your deck a little bit before the enemies actually get to the gates. So that's kind of a cool, nifty game design piece there that I like. Okay, so we're skipping this combat phase because there's no enemies at the gates, although they are getting closer. And so now we can go back to the next training phase. So once again, we went for a soldier last time, so let's try to go for a... how about a headsman? A headsman, or maybe, yeah, I'll go for a headsman. So I'm placing this token here, and I'm saying I'm going for a headsman right now. And if you can see here, the requirements are you are allowed to draw 4 cards from your town, your castle. Your target is 2, so that's a pretty good possibility there. It's a pretty good likelihood of those 4 cards that I should make 2, although I could get unlucky. And I'm going to have to burn another peasant to be able to take this headsman into my castle and add him to my forces. So let's do that. Let's draw 4 cards. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so here are the 4 cards that we have drawn to be able to take this headsman. Now, some of the cards that we've drawn have actions that are printed on them. So let's resolve these actions. And I want to say the rules tell me to resolve them in a particular order. Let's see. Action. Peasants and item cards often involve actions, and when a card is on the battlefield, you can use its action and rotate it 90 degrees to show that it has been used. It is never mandatory to use an action. Okay. So it actually doesn't tell me, or maybe it does. Let's find out. Training. Number of cards, target, the chosen card is exchanged. Place a training token on a golden card. Choose first among cards with 1 sword symbol. Draw the number of cards indicated. Use the actions of your cards into play and or exchange your bodyguard. And then compare the total force of your cards with the target training cost. Okay. So that's what we're going to do. So this one says, send another card to the hospital, then gain 1 power, which is great. So far, with the cards that we've got kind of displayed here, our total value, remember our target is 2. Right now our total value is 0, 0, minus 2, minus 3. So right now we've got a total value of minus 3, which sucks. But if we use this, let's use this action over here. First one, the village idiot is minus 2. But if we tap him, it says destroy another card in play. So I can tap this guy and use his action, and I can destroy this tax collector who's giving me a minus 1 right now. So destroy another card in play. Destroy, I'm going to assume, means leave the game. So boom, that minus 1 is now permanently gone from my deck, which is kind of cool. And then I've got another action here that says send another card to the hospital, then gain +1. And I'm wondering if the card that I can send to the hospital is the village idiot, even though I've used this action. Let me go ahead and take a look at the rules super quick. Use the actions of your cards into play. I'm not reading anything that tells me that I can't use or I can't target a tapped card as a target of an action. So I'm going to do it. So this apprentice's action says send another card to the hospital, then gain +1 currency. So I'm tapping that. I'm gaining +1 currency. And I'm sending the village idiot to the hospital. I'm taking him out of this particular training session. So now my total, it went from -3, -3 to +1, right? So adding up all the exposed kind of values. And now I only need 1 more to be able to satisfy the cost to be able to take this headsman into my castle. So I'm going to use this 1 resource and put that over there. Now my resources are down from 21 to 18, but I've satisfied the requirement to take the headsman into my castle. Almost. There's one more thing. I have to remove a peasant from my deck. So I'm going to take this farmer, who gives me a fight value of 0, and I'm going to remove him from the game. And in exchange, I basically trained up that farmer to be a headsman. And so now these guys end up in the hospital. Boom. So that was my second turn. And now, in terms of turn order, next thing that's going to happen is the enemy's going to push. So this card slides to the right. And then another enemy card takes the space over here. Still no enemies at my castle gates. So I'm going to skip the next combat phase, and I'm going to move back to the training phase. So my first training phase, I went for a soldier. My next training phase, I went for a headsman. So far, these cards enhance my offensive capabilities. My other choices right now, because I haven't won a combat yet, is I can't unlock these more powerful market cards. So I can go for a builder. Now, the builder is a valuable card because it is one of the only cards that allows you to generate more resources. The drawback, at least for my particular king, is that he makes builders more expensive to try to acquire. There's a -2, so I'm placing my token here on the builder, and I'm going ahead and I'm giving up 2 resources to be able to try to go for this builder. Okay, so that's that. And the builder says, if I can show you here super quick, the builder says, draw 4 cards and your target is 2. So that's what the builder says. And if I'm able to get it, then I have to burn another peasant. So that's a pretty familiar routine now. So we'll draw 4 cards from our castle, from our starter cards. So the lumberjack is giving us 1. And then the sword is giving us 1. So we've got 2 so far. Without any other cards, we've already made that target. So that's good. But we still have to draw those other cards. We don't have the option to say, okay, I'm going to stop now. Do I? Let's go ahead and check the rules super quick. Draw the number of cards indicated in the training process. So you can't kind of say, unlike Friday, I think with Friday you have a limit, right? And with Friday you can say, oh, with the cards that I've already drawn, I haven't even reached the limit yet. I can. I've already made my goal. I'm not gonna choose not to get any more cards because they could actually be bad for me. They could lower the limit that I've already made. But apparently in this game, you don't have that option. Apparently in this game, you have to draw the number of cards indicated on the card that you are going after, which is both good and bad. All right, so we are drawing another card, a scout leader, and he's giving me another positive value of 1. So I've got 3 so far. So far, so good. And he's got an action when the scout leader becomes bodyguard. He's giving me an eye symbol, which I believe the eye symbol means that I can expose a face-down enemy. So that's kind of a cool thing. Matthew Weber asks, how many cards in the starter deck? Excellent question. 20. 20 cards in the starter deck. Out of a total of 40 cards, I believe, that come with the game, or even more than 40. Because this game is soloable, as you can see right here, or you can play it 2-player co-op. And if you're playing 2-player co-op, then the starter deck number doubles to 40 rather than 20 to support that second player. Excellent question. Thank you for your question. We still have 1 more card to draw. So that card is going to be a farmer who at least doesn't subtract from our total here, just doesn't add to it. So this is great actually, because we've generated more than enough of the to make the target to be able to take this builder into our castle. The one last piece of requirement is we have to burn a peasant. And so of these 4 that are here, the one that makes the most sense to burn, at least from my perspective, is this farmer who's not adding anything to our kind of training effort here. So I'm burning this farmer. Again, thematically, the farmer now becomes a builder. So we successfully trained the farmer to become a builder. And then all of these cards go into the hospital. Cool. Next piece, if we consult our little cheat sheet here, is the enemy pushes. So enemy pushes, enemy pushes, enemy pushes, and in the following turn, the enemy is going to be at the castle gates. Haven't gotten there yet. So now we should be having a combat phase, but there's no enemies yet at the castle gates, so we are not going to resolve combat right now. And now we go back to the training phase for the following turn. And because we haven't resolved any combat yet, we haven't defeated any enemies, we are not yet, we haven't made the requirements to be able to start purchasing from kind of like the higher value, these 4 market cards here at the top, the higher value ones, the Mechanical Guardian, the Catapult, the Berserker, and the Blacksmith, with their bigger points and their kind of more exciting actions. We're still kind of purchasing from the lower tier of the market here, the Archer, Soldier, Priest, Headsman, Builder. So far, we've purchased a Soldier in our first turn, a Headsman in our second turn, and a Builder in our third turn. So now our choices are Archer or Priest. Now the Archer's special ability is he can add 1 more card to your war effort, or you have the choice of either adding a card or exposing an enemy. So that's kind of cool. The priest says, when the priest becomes a bodyguard, bring 1 peasant back from the hospital into play. So also adds cards. I think I'm going to go for the archer this time around. So I'm going to place this green token on the archer deck. I'm going to grab one of these archers here. Okay, so that's the archer that I'm going after this turn. And he says, you can see that, draw 3 cards. Draw 3 cards. Target is 2. Burn a peasant. Okay, so that's what we're going to try to go for right now. First card is a sword with a positive value of 1. So far, so good. And then a lumberjack with a positive value of 1. All right. We've already made the target. Hopefully that doesn't get messed up by this next card. It does get messed up by the next card. So the next card is a pyromaniac, and his flavor text is the roof. The roof is on fire. Well, you set the fire, you moron. Okay, so we had 1, 2, then -1 from the pyromaniac. So our total is 1, and our target was 2. So we have to make up the shortfall by giving up a resource. So here's 1 resource here, and we are going to give that up. I'm going to discard that. And so we take the archer into our castle. However, we have to get rid of a peasant, and I'm just itching to get rid of this pyromaniac who's not doing us any good. And in exchange for that pyromaniac, we get an archer. And everybody ends up in the hospital. Cool. So now we do the number 2 in the turn sequence, which is the enemy pushes. So now that the enemy pushes, this kind of rightmost enemy is going to end up at the castle gates. And then everybody else is going to push rightward. Like so. Okay, now that we have an enemy at the castle gates, here's what's going to happen. First thing is we flip the enemy over to reveal it. And it's revealed as an archer goblin. So there's kind of a couple of effects here. This big red number here, this is the value that you have to generate, the war value that you have to generate to be able to defeat the archer goblin. This is the number of cards that you are allowed to draw to be able to defeat the archer goblin. And I believe there's also a -1 here, which means, if I'm not horribly mistaken, as soon as this archer goblin appears, he steals a resource from us, the jerk. So he's there at the castle gates, and don't ask me how, but somehow he was able to steal a resource from us, which sucks. Let me just verify that in terms of the war sequence. Combat. Reveal the enemy card at the far left of the castle gate space. Then draw its card and launch its action. Repeat step 1 for each enemy from left to right, including new enemies who can arrive into play during combat. So that's the thing about this game, is that you don't necessarily fight enemies one by one. They could very well, because of effects, kind of stack and show up in multiples, and you have to deal with them. But the cool thing is that the more enemies that you have threatening you at the castle gates, the more cards you get to draw as well. So this kind of increases the number of things that you could be doing and cards that you could be pulling and drawing and resolving during each phase. And it can get pretty complicated, pretty hot and heavy, but it's all based on the cards. And as long as you're doing it in sequence, it shouldn't be too overwhelming to kind of operate. Number 3, initiate your actions and or exchange your bodyguard. And if the enemy pushes because of new cards drawn as an effect of your actions, repeat step 1. Then you compare the force total. And then it's if you win or if you lose. Okay, so I think I have enough to be able to resolve this particular combat. Just want to check one more thing. I'm looking at the enemies. You defeat the enemy, rotate its card, and obtain the item card. This card is added to your hospital deck. Okay, cool. All right. I think that so far I'm resolving this correctly. So I'm going to leave the rules on combat here. I've got 2 people in the stream. Hello, hello, and thanks for joining me. So we'll resolve this combat right now. So the archer is at the gates, and he says we can draw 2 cards from our castle. So 1, 2. Great. The 2 worst peasants of our enemy have come out of our castle deck. A farmer who gives us 0 fight value, and then a pyromaniac who gives us -1 fight value. So our current fight value is -1, and to defeat this goblin, we need to make 2. So again, to make up the shortfall... Oh, and did I actually... Okay, I didn't actually resolve the -1 resource. So, give me a 1 here. There you go. -1 resource. So how many resources am I down to now? 3, 6, 9, 12, 13, 14. I started at 21. I'm down 7 so far. Okay, so to be able to defeat this, great. He's not really going to give us a great thing, because defeating the archer goblin will give us panties, and the panties give us 0 combat points. So that's not a great thing to do. But we don't like having the archer in our castle gates, because as more enemies pile up here, he's going to be adding his fight value there and being a nuisance. So we definitely want to defeat him. If you win combat, rotate the enemy cards 180 degrees and add them to the hospital deck with the rest of your cards into play. If you lose combat, lose the difference in resources, then distribute your force among the enemy cards into play. If you can equal the force of 1 or more enemies, defeat these enemies and keep their cards. Otherwise, the surviving enemies gain 1 bonus token corresponding to their sword symbol. Okay, so I understand now. I can't actually defeat him because I did not make the requisite number of battle points. So the goblin stays here in the castle gates, which kind of sucks. And I'm going to have to try to defeat him in a future turn. If you lose combat, lose the difference in resources. Well, that sucks. So my difference in resources is -1 to 2. So I have to lose 3 resources, because 2 minus 1 is 1. I lose 1 resource. Okay. So there you go. I lose 1 resource. So now I'm down to 13. I hope I'm playing right. Give me some feedback if you think I'm resolving this incorrectly. Then distribute your force among the enemy cards into play. If you can equal the force of 1 or more enemies, defeat these enemies and keep their cards. Otherwise, the surviving enemies gain 1 bonus token corresponding to their sword symbol. So this archer goblin is actually going to become more powerful. He's got 1 sword, so he's going to gain +1 power or force. And he's going to bug me even more in the following combat phase, which kind of sucks. All right, so that's that. And everybody who fought in the war goes to the hospital. Boom. So we now go back to training. And so the only one of the 5 starter cards that we haven't actually purchased is the priest. So let's go ahead and try to purchase a priest. I'm placing this. And unlike all the other kind of market cards, there's 4 duplicates or copies of each market card. The priest only has 2. So there's fewer priests in this game. So the priest allows us to draw 3 cards and then gives us a target of 3 points. So let's go ahead and try to do that now. So we will draw 1, 2, 3. And we didn't make the 3 points. We've got 2 farmers and 1 sword. So that's a total of 1. The target's 3. So we have to make up the difference in resources. So we will give up 1. We'll give up these 2 resources here. Okay. So right now I have 3, 6, 9, 12, 13. I have to go down to 11. 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. Boom. So that's how I go down by 2 resources. And I have to burn a peasant. So I'm going to burn one of these farmers. So they go. And now these things go to the hospital. And the enemy pushes. So this rightmost enemy card goes to the castle gates. And then these other enemies push. So the enemies are relentless. And they just keep coming. And then this guy exposes. It is a herd of goblins. Cool. So now we've got multiple enemies in play. And just to make sure with the rules, if you are in the combat phase, reveal the enemy card at the far left of the castle gates and draw its card and launch its action. And repeat step 1 for each enemy from left to right, including the new enemies who can arrive into play during combat. Okay, so starting from the leftmost side, we're going to draw 2 cards. Okay, so we draw 1. Now, we've run out of cards in our castle. And it says right here, when the castle is empty, the enemy pushes. And if it happens during the boss fight, you lose -2 resources, which kind of sucks. So right this second, the enemy pushes. So because we ran out of troops in the castle. So that sucks because now we have a full complement of 3 enemies at the castle gates, which kind of sucks. Oops. There you go. We've got an archer goblin who was there from last combat phase. We've got a herd of goblins, and we've got a cow rider goblin. Now, the only good thing is that you can draw as many cards as you are allowed to draw based on the enemy. So the more enemies that you have out here at your castle gates, the more cards you're able to draw to kind of defeat them all. Right now, their total fight value is 3 for this guy, 4 for this guy, and 3 for this guy. So 7 plus 3 is 10. And I'm allowed to draw 9 cards. And between all those 9 cards, I need to make 10 or better to be able to defeat these enemies. And then flip them 180 degrees and add them to my castle. So that's kind of how that works out. So we're going to resolve this combat, and then I'm going to pause the live stream. Let's do this. From reveal the enemy card, and then repeat step 1 for each enemy from left to right, including the new enemies who can arrive. Draw its cards and launch its action. Okay, so from here, I draw 2 cards. So that was 1. And I'm going to take my hospital deck and I'm going to shuffle it to become my new castle deck. Just like a proper deck builder. I have to say, at this point, if I can just share my initial impressions after playing. I'm liking this one. It's similar to Friday, but it's also different, and it's actually easier. Just from my personal perspective, because I like the fact that printed directly on the cards is the requirements to be able to resolve that card, which is, you know, I just like that. I like that. I like that a lot better. I've heard some people say in the solo board gamers group that this is a game that killed Friday for them, and I can believe that. Um, I'm frankly, I haven't played Friday physical or on my or in the app for a long time, and there's always been something kind of like dry and mathematical about Friday for me, and a little less thematic. And this game is a little bit more fun, a little bit more thematic. The kind of cartoony. Um, artwork, the funny sort of like characters here are a little bit more appealing to me than Friday, with kind of its like suspect artwork and whatnot. Yeah, there's just something more kind of dry and Euro feeling about Friday to me, and more sort of dryly mathematical. And this one doesn't feel that way as much. So I'm kind of liking this one. All right, so let's just continue and let's resolve this combat, and then kind of wrap it up. Wrap up this demo, this portion of the playthrough. Okay, so for the Archer Goblins, I draw 2 cards. Lovely. I've got a Village Idiot with a -2. And I'll keep repeating step 1 for each enemy from left to right, including the new enemies who can arrive into play during combat. Initiate your actions and or exchange your bodyguard. Oh, one more thing. In combat, once per combat phase, you can swap out your bodyguard for somebody that's in play. So, for instance, this Village Idiot, who's giving me a -2 right now, I could swap out my Village Idiot and send him to the hospital, I want to say. And in exchange, I could swap in my bodyguard. And the way the bodyguard works is the value of a bodyguard is variable. That's what this asterisk here means. And it explains down at the bottom, the more bodyguards you actually have in your field of battle, the more points they're going to generate. Bodyguards. So in this case, soldiers. So for example, if you have 1 soldier, that 1 soldier is going to be worth 2 points. If you have 2 soldiers, each soldier card is worth 3 points. So the more soldiers you have in play, the more kind of cumulatively they are worth. Oh, and I had that, I think I had that flipped over from your perspective, which kind of sucks. I apologize for that. Okay. So I could choose to do that. But so far, I have resolved the number of cards based on the Archer Goblin here. Now let's draw the number of cards. And the Archer Goblin, he will persistently filch 1 resource from me, which is freaking annoying. And then the Herd of Goblins allows me to draw 3 cards. Ooh, so the Priest came out. That's kind of cool. And then, an Archer came out, so that's kind of cool. So my upgraded cards are coming out. And an Apprentice. So that's very cool. So he says, according to this, it says, repeat step 1 and draw its cards and launch its action. Great. So resolving this middle card, the Herd of Goblins, after drawing the 3 cards, it says, send a peasant to the hospital. So I could send my farmer to the hospital, or I could send my Village Idiot to the hospital, which is... The Village Idiot does have a useful action, but he's also a -2. So I'm going to send the Village Idiot to the hospital. There you go. To the hospital. There you go. And I've resolved everything on this middle card. So now let me resolve the effects of the final card. This Cow Rider Goblin, which sucks. The Cow Rider Goblin has a really annoying action, which I'll get to in a second. So draw 4 cards. The Builder came out. The Sword came out. Pyromaniac. and sword. Okay, so that's what I've got so far. I've got the total number of cards, and I have to resolve. It says, send your strongest peasant to the hospital, which is freaking annoying. Oh, and what happened to my video? Sorry for that interruption of the live video. It says, send your strongest peasant to the hospital. So, well, my strongest peasant would either be my priest or my archer. So if they're tied, then I have a choice. And the priest says, when the priest becomes a bodyguard, bring one peasant back from the hospital into play. So that's not a relevant action right now. So I, sadly, am going to send the priest to the hospital, which is annoying. All right, so that's what I got. Now, initiate your actions and or exchange your bodyguard. If the enemy pushes because of new cards drawn as an effect of your actions, repeat step 1. Well, at this point, the castle gates are full up. So if the enemy pushes again as a result of continuing actions here, they don't get added to the castle gates. They just leave the game, which kind of sucks because these cards that are unrevealed right now could very well be some good cards that I might want to add to my castle. So, but again, that's kind of for the future. So let's look at our actions here. So the archer gives us a choice of actions. He can give us +1 card or allow us to reveal an enemy. Right now, I think +1 card is the way to go. So I'm tapping it and using its action to give us +1 card, which is a farmer. And then the apprentice has an action that says, send another card to the hospital, then gain +1. So I'll tap that. And I can send the pyromaniac to the hospital because he's actively working against me right now. And I'll gain +1 for that. And the final action that I have available to me here is the builder, tap it to gain 2 resources, which is very, very welcome right now. So I'll actually gain 2 resources here and flip this over to become a 3. So I was in the danger zone in terms of resources, and now I'm back to 3, 6, 9, 12. All right, that is the total that I've got for my forces here. And so now, based on the rules, it says compare your force total. If you win combat, rotate the enemy cards 180 degrees and add them to the hospital deck with the rest of your cards into play. So let's compare. The enemies have 7 + 3 is 10. I've got 2, 3, 4, 5. So I do not my forces do not meet the total of the enemy forces. So it says if you lose combat, lose the difference in resources. So they've got 10, I've got 5. I've got to lose 5 resources. So I'm losing that 3, and I'm losing a 4 and a 5. So now my resources are now down to 6, which sucks. And then it says, then distribute your force among the enemy cards into play. If you can equal the force of 1 or more enemies, defeat these enemies and keep their cards. So I've got a total of 5, which means that I could take out this archer goblin. No, I can't because he's a 3. Darn it. Darn it. So now I can really only defeat 1 card. I have to choose if I want to defeat the archer goblin or if I want to defeat the cow rider goblin. But I can't do a combo because I've only got 5 points. That's 2, 3. No, I've got 6 points. I have 6 points. I counted wrong. Look at this. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Whew. Okay, so, which means I'm going to get 1 resource back. Okay, good. And I can actually defeat 2 cards here. I can defeat the archer goblin and the cow rider goblin, which is kind of cool. Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and defeat the cow rider goblin, who was 3, and spin him to his item side, which is panties, and defeat the Cow Rider Goblin, another 3, total of 6, and flip him to his Maggie side. He's giving me 0, but he's got a nice effect. He's going to give me more resources. So cool. So I defeat those enemies. This guy becomes my leftmost bad guy. And defeat and keep their cards. Otherwise, surviving enemies gain 1 bonus token corresponding to their sword symbol. So the herd of goblins that's currently out here will gain a +1 because it's got 1 sword symbol, and the limit is of 1 bonus token for each enemy. Cool. So I've just resolved all the combat that I had to resolve here. And everybody is now going to go to the hospital. Whew. So you can see, after resolving this kind of couple of combat rounds here, that it can get, the complexity in terms of resolving card for card can get very complex very quickly, which I find kind of cool, because I was completely absorbed in terms of resolving that one combat round. So I'm going to add these guys to the hospital, and then I'm going to pause for now, and then I'm going to basically tell you, I mean, I already gave you a little bit of my thoughts earlier, but I just like the fact that I like games with very specific turn sequences. So it's got a very specific turn sequence, and I like the fact that it's got a simple rule set. It becomes complex as a result of kind of, you know, card play, kind of the cards that come into play and the combinations thereof. So that's a cool thing for me. I like the fact that the market has kind of 2 tiers, a 1 sword tier and then a 2 sword tier. Oh, and that reminds me, now that I've started to defeat cards in combat, I now unlock being able to purchase from the higher level market card. So that's kind of cool. So I like the fact that the enemy deck is also 2 tiers, so which like ensures that the first enemies to come out are going to be lower level enemies, but still pretty challenging, as you can see. And then the next enemies to come out are going to be the higher level enemies. Yeah, so those are some of the kind of like the cool things that I like about this game. It is definitely, I'm liking the feel of the hybrid of tower defense, the kind of feeling of the enemies are inexorably coming toward your castle gates, and then they can stack up there. And then you kind of resolve their printed actions. And so again, like I said, it's simple rule set, straightforward. The complexity comes in resolving card after card after card after card after card, and then seeing what kind of cascading effects those have in the rest of the cards in your deck, the cards that are in the enemy deck. Yeah. And also the initial variability in terms of the king or queen that you choose to start the game with. So we've been at this for nearly an hour, and I want to say thank you so much to Matthew, who stuck strong for the entire time. And for folks who are watching this kind of on a replay, thank you for joining me on this kind of playthrough of the setup and playthrough of Goblivion. And this has been Martin, and we will see you next time. Bye now.